Thank you much.
Oh, I do not see it. Here's our school. Was this your first night? Let's get a new one.
Just suspect we don't have to. Yep.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and call our meeting to order. It's January 23rd, 6 o'clock special meeting, and we'll start with our pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, want to take roll for us? Christopher Abel.
Here.
Viv Hansen.
Here.
Matthew Phipps.
Present.
Stacy Seldner.
Here.
Matthew Spalding.
Here.
Carrie Trask.
Here.
Tony Bustelica.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, and then we have several items on the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to take off?
The,
Yes.
under personnel, the B2, administrative contract.
Okay,
I'd want B1 off, so just B.
just B. Okay, all right.
As in busy.
Got it. Okay, anything else? Okay, so C, we will take off, we will approve the consent agenda. Well, I look for a motion in a second to approve the consent agenda without letter B. Motion by Matthew Spalding, second by
Sure, I'll second. Or Matt.
Chris Abel.
Thank you.
All right, although any well, we don't do discussion on those. Any, all those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, so we will start off with the personnel report, and before we talk about that, I would just look for a motion in a second to approve before discussion.
Motion.
Motion by Matthew Spalding,
Second.
second by Carrie Trask. Okay, and Chris, since you took that one off, go for it.
Yes, and it's a relatively, I think, simple question. So unless I'm wrong, we approved 2 positions at our last meeting, new positions, and I'm just wondering why they're not on here as open positions.
Good question. 'Cause I forgot to put them on there.
Okay, all right, just checking.
It was pretty simple.
Yeah, see, okay, proving.
And you guys said I was the
No
one
problem.
that had attention to detail. With you, Chris. Said they say I was the one that had
I'm
attention.
not officially hired yet.
Okay, any other discussion about the personnel report letter,
We'll see you next
first one?
Okay.
Okay, see none, all those that approve the personnel report signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then I'll look for a motion in a second to approve the recommended administrator contract renewal for 2024-2026.
I'll move that.
Okay, Carrie Trask first,
I'll
second. Okay, second by Tony Blestelica. And, Bill, go ahead.
Just a few questions. First of all, thank you for your honesty on that answer, and thank you for your help today with my request. And I don't want this to be taken as anybody on that list is somebody who I do not want on that list, but I just have some questions with 2-year contracts. Only administrators get 2-year contracts. There's no teacher that gets a 2-year contract, correct?
Right.
If we would reorganize or positions would become vacated, how does that work? What does the district have to do? Let's say that for some reason we no longer needed an AP at the high school, and we had to lay somebody off. How does that work with a 2-year contract?
In the contract, I believe the administrative contract has a layoff clause. And I believe that as a result of the layoff clause, we can still lay somebody off, but it's in the contract. But that's a question, Biff, that before I would go down that road, if anything, if we got to that point, it'd be a call of legal counsel.
Okay.
But we do have a layoff clause in that contract, if I remember correctly.
I would appreciate if you would do that. I guess my question is, if we would have to lay somebody off from one position, could they go to another position instead of us just giving them the payout for not having the second year of employment?
Absolutely. It all depends on if the district wanted to move somebody. to
Right.
another position.
I guess I'm saying that if its performance wasn't bad, but we no longer had a position, I guess I'm also looking for the parameters that we could then put somebody in. Does it have to be a job that's exactly the same? Does it have to be an administrative position? What kind of things could we fill with somebody that we had to lay off in that position? And so if we could find out that out legally, those kind of things, I'd appreciate
Yeah,
it.
that's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Yes, Chris?
Yeah, first, I would echo that. This comment, Mr. Hanson's comment, that I would not want to single out any particular individual on this list. However, perfectly consistent with what I said the last time administrative contracts came up. And the last time we had the discussion about what's usual and customary, it is my belief that we have to get better as a district, academically, behaviorally, and transparently. I'm just trying to make them all sound the same. But I think we have to do better as a district before we go back to usual and customary. So I do not support 2-year rolling contracts until we get better as a district. I appreciate all those that are doing great work. We still have a ways to go before I think we're ready for usual and customary. Thank you.
Anything else? Tony?
Yeah, just, I guess on that note, Chris, I'm curious, if we move away from what's standard in the industry, could that work against us in, as far as recruitment efforts and just retention efforts? Wouldn't it make sense to keep the people that we want, like on an industry standard contract?
Yes, Chris?
Okay,
Respond if you would like.
Yes, and to that, I would say, quite honestly, you can make the adverse argument, which is doing it my way. You may see people really step up, who you then start granting 2-year contracts to. And other people then starting to get the message or look for a district where their style of management or administration works better.
Yeah, I guess just my thoughts are, I tend to disagree, just knowing how much difficulty we've had filling positions and how competitive the job market is. I think, again, that's just my thoughts. Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Mike.
Well, I would just share that before I went to a district, when I went into that district HR, we were replacing, it was a significant number of administrators. And one of the reasons I was told, I'm just sharing this, one of the reasons I was told was because the board changed to a 1-year contract versus 2, and people just weren't, they didn't like the stability of a 1-year contract. For what it's worth, I'm just sharing that out.
Mr. Hanson, I just like to refer to my first year I was on the board. I think that exact scenario that you just asked about had happened a few times. And those individuals got asked if they would want to transfer into a different position. And then if they did not decline to that, then it went out openly to the whole district. But that has happened many, many times. I believe, I know it happened at least 3 to 4 times since I've been here, so.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. My concern is if you offer a position and then they don't take it, I want to make sure we don't have to pay them out.
Yeah, that was another concern as well.
That's my concerns. I guess, Tony, to your concern, I'm assuming we've been using 2-year contracts here. And we've lost a lot of administrators even with those contracts. So it goes both ways. It's got to be a district you are comfortable staying at. So a 2-year contract isn't a guarantee that someone's going to stay there. So I would agree with Chris that maybe we should look at it, but the other thing we have to look at is how do we keep people here so they don't leave.
Can I respond real quick?
Sure.
I would agree we want people to stay, but I'm just thinking from the outside, you know, if we wanted to attract new people in the district and they had an option between a 2-year versus a 1-year, you know, it would probably be more attractive for someone to come where they had a little bit more contract, I guess, right? At least that's the way I would look at it, so. I think if we want to keep and recruit the best, then we should probably stick with industry norms.
You don't have to
Okay,
do it.
hang on a second.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm just gonna say that I can see how there can be concerns either way. But I looked at this list and these are all rock stars, so let's just move on with the book.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you don't have to do it blanket, you know, you don't have to like give everybody a 2-year contract or a 1-year contract. I mean, if people are really, you know, pulling the low, it's just like, well, offer them the reward. And the other people that I know, I can think of people that have been in here that are now gone, that we should have given a 1-year contract to, and if they didn't step up, you know, not being on at all. But so I think the flexibility is could be really, you know, really worth something.
Other discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the administrative contract renewals for 2024, 2026 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed?
No.
No? One?
Just like.
Okay. So that ends our discussion in our consent agenda. We'll move on to the report of the superintendent, and I believe Katie will talk about the open enrollment for students with disabilities.
Since January, each January, LEAs across the state are required to make determinations about open enrollment seat capacity for the following school year. So we're talking about open enrollment seat capacity for the 24-25 school year for students with disabilities only. So students who do not reside in our school district who are seeking special education services in our district. This memo that is attached to that document explains how funding has changed over the course of the year, and as opposed to being able to be reimbursed for specific student needs, there's a blanket fund. And as we all know, and as we've been talking about, students with disabilities can come with some pretty significant needs that can be cost prohibitive to districts, especially when they're not students that are residing in our community. So on the bottom of the document, it talks about the decision-making process. So each year we are required to project our enrollments or disability caseloads for the following school year. Then we are asked to make suggested caseload recommendations based on the level of need, their students' disability-related needs, their service minutes, their service location type, etc. Then we are asked to determine space availability by suggesting that projected enrollment to the level of need of the student. And then we make our recommendations based on open or closed programming. So we don't utilize a number or a head count for making these decisions. We're looking at the level of programming that's required for students. So I included in this document our MPSD workload matrix that helps in that decision-making process. And then on the second page of that document, you'll see it. We're talking about students who receive minimal or moderate support, students who receive extensive support, and students who receive comprehensive support. And on the following page, it gives some suggested caseload sizes based on those category identifications, gives the workload teacher ratio score, and then you'll see that based on that analysis, that we have no seats available for open enrollment for students with disabilities for the 24-25 school year. Okay, so I'd look for a motion in a second to approve the open enrollment for students with the disabilities.
So moved.
Chris Abel.
Second.
Second by Matthew Phipps. Okay, any discussion regarding this? Fifth.
Besides for the student, because I think we have a good level of service in our district for kids with disabilities. So besides for the students and the family, is there any advantage to having kids come to the district? Serving those kids?
We're not compensated for them, so should a student with a disability with significant needs, should we accept their open enrollment, there could potentially be a need to hire more support staff to be able to serve that student. So right now, we are at the very high end of what a caseload recommendation on all of for all of our teachers, even with our paraprofessionals. So to say that right now where our people's workload analysis is falling, I would not feel comfortable saying that we have the capacity to continue to accept students. We also have an incredibly transient community, so in the past 2 years since I have been in this role, we have had approximately 120 students move into our community with disabilities, and we've had approximately 60 to 70 in the past 2 years leave. So we are gaining 40 plus students on average.
So to get this straight in my head, we must get the standard student rate that you would get if a regular ed kid came into the district, correct?
It's a bit different, so that's included in the memo of this page too. So students with disabilities for open enrollment receive $13,814, which is approximately $400-ish more than what $4,000-ish over $4,852 over what a general education student receives for open enrollment. Yes.
So the additional cost, again, because of students and teacher-student ratio, which is different from classrooms.
It also, depends on what those IEP needs are. So there could be occupational therapy needs, speech and language therapy needs, other related service needs too, that also tie into that workload analysis and the total cost of that student. Along those lines, just have one additional document that was included. So you should have something that looks like this. What this is a continuum of programming in the MPSD that just outlines what we have available in all of our buildings and what we have as far as special education programming for students is concerned district-wide and beyond. So on this little infographic, you'll see that our least restrictive programming, so most inclusive, where students have greater access to their general education classroom instruction and peers, is located at the top of that page. And then our most restrictive programming, where we're determining, our IEP teams are determining that a student really has needs that would best be met outside of their typical school setting, are at the bottom of that infographic. There are some GEs and SEs. GE stands for General Education Environment. SE stands for Special Education Environment. And you'll notice that the two general education programs at the top of the infographic are programs that would be available to our students with disabilities in their home school, in all of our buildings. So we try our best to make sure that students have access to their general education classroom instruction and peers to the greatest extent possible. Consider their least restrictive environment for programming, and then IEP teams make those decisions. So should a student have needs that can't be met 100% of the time in that general education environment, then that's where we move into some of our more restrictive programming. So we have options where special education students spend a little bit more time in a special education classroom than in just their general education classroom. We have those options available, resource type options available for all students in all buildings in our school district. Then we move into some specialized programs that may take place at schools other than a student's home school. For example, we have a program at Jackson Elementary School for students with emotional behavioral needs that are significant. We call those EBDS programs. We used to have a program at Jefferson Elementary, so we had a North Side, South Side program. Because we could not find a teacher to fill that role at Jefferson, we now only have EBDS at Jackson Elementary School. We have IDS, Intellectual Disabilities Programming, at 2 of our elementary schools, at Riverview Elementary and Franklin Elementary. So students that have those more comprehensive needs, like we talked about on open enrollment, would have the opportunity to go to one of those programs that may not be at that student's home school. Those are decisions that are made by IEP teams. And then we also have a high school, Lincoln High School program for students with more significant emotional behavioral needs that need unique programming that's taking place out of our Stengel building. So that brings us to our off-site programming, or specialized programming at the Stengel building. So Stengel is home to some unique programs, which we would consider more at risk, and we do have some of our special education programs also taking place at that building. So we have the Manitowoc Comprehensive Program, MCP, which is our off-site EBDS program, where students grades 1 through 8 participate in programming at the Stengel building in the Manitowoc Comprehensive Program. And students are placed there by IEP teams after they have gone through the gamut of other options in our district. So typically these students that are at the MCP have been through resource programming in their home school, and we're determining that that's not working. And then they potentially have been placed at either Jackson or Jefferson in the past. And we realize that's not necessarily meeting their needs. Then the IEP team, after all of those lesser restrictive options are exhausted, then they have the option to participate in programming at the MCP, which is housed at the Stengel building, with the goal is to transition them back to their traditional school setting as quickly as humanly possible. And then, yeah.
How many students have successfully been reincorporated from the CP back to the regular education setting?
All of them at some point have gone back to a traditional school setting. Some of, success is unique to each of those students. So there have been students then that have gone on to some alternative graduation pathways. So success doesn't necessarily mean they end up at Lincoln High School and they're on the same, diploma pathways and other students. Some may take more vocational pathways or some alternative pathways. But we currently, for example, transitioning 2 students to Washington Middle School right now for second semester. So, but again, the goal is always to return those students to a typical school setting as soon as humanly possible, prior to just getting to Lincoln, because that's a very big leap for students to jump from one of our most restrictive elementary middle school programs to a high school program, our biggest building in our least restrictive environment. So the goal is a slower transition for them.
Do you know how many students we have in the MCP?
We have 14 students right now.
I was wondering, I love this diagram, and I think it would be helpful for me and I'm assuming the board if we could map out on these areas the programs that we have, just in addition to that, so that, and I don't know if that's, I would even think for the community so that everybody knows, what options that there are. I know it's determined by the IEP. That's why I'm not sure about the community, but I guess that, that they know how we are servicing, our students in need. So I just think that because sometimes, like we've talked about when we're talking about McKinley and slash Stengel, a lot, even new board members don't know what the program is over there, right? So I just think that'd be helpful as a way to really know all the services that we have to offer here. Absolutely. Any other? Yeah.
Katie, could you talk a little bit about, you talked about, I think it was Riverview and Franklin have ID programs. I just remember going through IEP meetings and making sure that my daughter had the least restrictive environment in her home school. And how do we go through that process where a student would have to be sent to a different school rather than stay in the home school with their brothers and sisters who may be there?
That's a great question. So again, we avoid those types of more restrictive placements at all costs, but really what it boils down to is the level of significance of need and the need for access to maybe some of the therapies and closer access or augmentative assistive communication devices, or a level of therapies and equipment and resources and things that we just don't have the programming for in every building. So those classrooms tend to have a lower student staff ratio. Again, they are primarily filled with our most significantly disabled, so we can really hone in on the specialized program. But that doesn't mean those students don't continue to have access to classrooms. It may just be not in their home school in that moment. So that doesn't mean they don't have the same access and opportunities given supports to be in the general ed classroom and environment. It just means based on what their needs are on those IEP team decisions, sometimes what we can offer them in those programming, in those two buildings, is just more extensive than what we have available to us in all of our buildings.
Thank you. That explanation, it's good to hear that, if a student has an intellectual disability and they can stay in the home school, we do what we can to keep them there.
Absolutely.
Doesn't take me back to the bad old days. Thank you.
We'll avoid those.
Any other questions or discussion for Katie? Oh, Katie, I'm sorry.
No, I was just I can finish or.
Yeah, go ahead, please do.
Or
Yeah, please
we
do.
can just be done. I'm
No,
totally okay with that.
please do, I wasn't sure.
So we have some students who participate in offsite programming at Clark Beach Hall. Those are students that are on our advanced agreements or have a temporary removal for disciplinary reason. And again, those are decisions that are made by building administrators and IEP teams. And then there's a significant amount of progress monitoring, again, with the goal to as quickly reinstate them back to their typical learning environment as soon as humanly possible. We have students that receive homebound instruction. Those students are primarily as a result of some health-related needs. We have employ a homebound instructor. She also works at our offsite Clark Bridge Hall program. And then lastly, we have some out-of-district programming that we send children to based on, our ability through all of these programs to meet their needs. And again, sometimes those are decisions that are made in collaboration with Human Services and some of our other community partners. But we do have students participating in offsite programming, and it's usually significant behavioral needs that we just are unable to support in the district. And then we're always, we have these programs available. We don't fit kids into our programs. We program for our students based on their unique individualized needs. So again, the goal is always to have students and to provide as many supports as humanly possible in their home school so they have access to general education environment, curriculum, and peers. In the event that that's not successful, then we need to think about how we are programming to best meet the students' needs, to give them, help build the skills and provide the support that they need. We recently are considering some programming needs for students on the autism spectrum with significant autism needs. And we have some unique programming to support a student right now that has some unique needs. And right now that is taking place at the Stengel building, but we're looking at options in some of our home schools. So again, we don't want to remove children from their home school if at all possible, but we're always trying to be responsive to the needs of students. Go ahead, Mark.
What other programs do we have at the Stengel facility? Besides the MCP and then the autism?
Yep, and Lincoln High School has a 9-12 program.
How many students enrolled here?
His caseload's about 9 or 10.
Is there anything else going on in Stengel?
That's special ed wise, that's all that we have housed out of that building.
Okay. All right, all in favor of approving the an open enrollment for students with disabilities signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Do we have a motion and a second for that?
We did
before.
Yeah, we did before.
Okay, sorry. I totally apologize on this.
That's okay.
I was just making sure we didn't miss it. So I'm an
I think we did, right?
Yeah, Chris
Okay.
made the first.
Chris,
And I made it. How sad is that? I don't even remember.
Thank you, Katie, I appreciate it.
It's the snow. Honest, that's what it is.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the MPSD mid-year performance report. Go ahead, Jim.
Thanks, Stacy.
Yeah.
So I have attached two documents for you, and some of this carries over into a closed session, my evaluation, but I thought it would be beneficial to kind of review where we came from last year to this year on what we established. And so when we look at last year, my first year, and then we brought in a couple individuals mid-year, in terms of both Mike and Jamie, were added also in terms of, but last year, coming on board, the board conveyed to me, and I confirm, that essentially we saw ourselves in a crisis, a reading crisis, with approximately 70% of our kids not reading at grade level. And also in terms of student behavior, where there was already an ad hoc group coming in. I believe I picked up where reference was made from the prior administration. The superintendent had made a reference that we even had a crisis in behavior. And I confirmed, that those are both significant issues. I shared with you trend data, that really showed, over a 6-7 year period of time, we were downward trending. And we've conveyed similar information through this year in some of our reports. So I bring that to your attention. I think everybody knows that they could look up any school district on a state report card, but if you would go there, you would probably see, from the DPI website for report cards, that the first report card that they have listed there is back in 2011-12. I mean, I just picked up a few more things as I was kind of reviewing again, kind of where we came from. And that first report card had no district report card. It only showed individual schools. But what was interesting to me, I decided to kind of scan through the schools, and I looked at, for Lincoln High School. Lincoln High School at that time score was 73.2, exceeds expectations. Just to share, with you in terms of reflecting back on the past, and what we're attempting to do is restore the status that we once had. Now, this is limited only to this 10-year period of time approximately. I couldn't go back further than that. But I point that out. I'd also like to point out, because we've highlighted the importance of foundational skills, and we talk specifically about reading. But it's important to the extent, and Mrs. McCall brought this to our attention to the extent that we're going to roll up the math review an additional year, because that's a foundational skill is critical. We see reading as critical because if you can't read, you're not likely to do math, story problems in terms of conceptually understanding. But what I did pick up was on that, on the state report cards, even though that was the first year, they have the prior 3 years of proficiency levels, for reading and math. And it was just curious. I kind of took a scan of that, and I was interested to find out in 2007-8, our math proficiency level was 45.7. 45.7, 2.1 points above the state average. And with the last report card, we are at 21.5, or 12.3 points below. So just some, kind of takeaways when you go back to see where we were and where we're at now and what we're attempting to do to put that in perspective. Additionally, there was some confusion sometimes when we looked at the, so two things that we established last year to start this year with was a turnaround plan largely focused on success for all, and we added curriculum mapping to that, kind of as two critical areas that we really need to make sure that we're on top of all curriculum. But literacy was critical and important. So I bring that to your attention. And the second item that we felt was significant was strategic planning, and we went through that process and adopted the 3-year strategic plan. What's important there is we haven't identified how any of those strategies, and Mrs. McCall was looking through there for me in terms of how many strategies do we have on there? We've got over 100 strategies. And I highlight that because if everything's important, if you don't pick priorities, but I have to I give credit to the board here to the extent of starting this year. you identified two critical priorities for us to focus our attention. So of all this, one was this implementation of Success for All. And the second item was culture. And then I asked for a third, and you agreed, and we added facilities assessment. You know, clearly those things were critical. So I just, that's a little context moving from last year into this year. So if we move back then to the next page, you know, went back up, so that's the strategic plan. And essentially, you know, we came up with 5 pillars. You know, the first one being the focus on student achievement. The second one, you could say behavior. The third one is about faculty, staff, and my takeaway was when you added culture, we were looking at both student and staff, but I read it more as staff culture, and it was because of the survey results. Okay, even though I'm promoting a culture of excellence, because if we aren't aiming, if we don't have things tied to where we want to end up, we're not likely to hit that target. So you know, I kind of labeled this with a culture of excellence in terms of what we're pursuing, not just reading, all curriculum areas, extracurriculars. You know, we're going to be a top tier performing school district. We have to look at it all, and we're in that process. So the next one is infrastructure and funding. That essentially is the budget, financial, and the facilities, which I just indicated. You also then had a takeaway with making another major goal, and that was the importance of doing a facilities assessment that can aid us in developing a long-range facilities plan, a strategic long-range facilities plan. And I would just, not to get ahead of myself here a little bit, but I would highlight that because of some state compliance issues, to be able to use our separate fund for capital, we had to have a capital plan. And we identified about 35 million. We were saying it could be up to about 50 million. We have it right around $35 million of kind of known items that we should address. Okay, that was before recognizing that we had to have a much thorough assessment. So I'm just sharing some of this stuff to create some context, okay? Now I would tell you, and we're on Thursday have another board report, and that is mainly, even though there's other items, we've got policies on there and some other things. But right now, preliminary, they're saying, yeah, you definitely need to have a long-range plan, but this facilities assessment, you're talking 35 billion, you know, we easily 100 million, 200 million, and that's why it's important. We're not waiting for March for the report. We want to bring the whole board, you know, up to speed in terms of kind of what's it looking like, because we have a lot of work ahead of us, and it's critically important that we start now. And that's why I kind of moved this up to put a couple items on the agenda for today too. But case in point, everybody recognized that, geez, the windows, water's coming in Lincoln High School. You know, and so in a recent progress report that we had with my executive team and CISA 10, I indicated, you know, in terms of what might be kind of the summer projects for this year and next year. And immediately I said, you know, you mean like Lincoln High School windows? And they kind of took me back when they said it may not be the windows, it could be the facility itself. So this is what you don't want to do, is a quick jump to, you know, in terms, because you recognize it must be coming through the windows, you know, but well, without having that. So really just what I'm saying is this assessment is already proving to be extremely valuable, but like we already knew for the last 5 years, we're behind. And we need to start thinking about how do we engage the community and stakeholders. But, you know, so that's just some background. So now if we go to the next page, and this is back to your goals. I asked Mrs. McCall and really my whole administrative team, we just haven't been able to do this, is to, of over the 100+ strategies that we listed, how many does SFA touch? Because we think that there's numerous ones in there, because it's not just a reading program. It's a whole school reform, and it's impacting 10 schools. I mean, some notable is it's built on a distributive leadership model. That says, and it kind of feeds right into what we've heard from staff last year and into this year. Staff were saying, we've not been heard, okay? Or, you're not hearing us. We weren't part of this. We weren't, so, what's really significant is SFA recognizes your teachers need to be deeply involved and not all the staff in your building. And so there is more than just the reading blocks. It's the cooperative learning throughout the school. It's solutions teams. And it's saying your whole school needs to be involved in terms of understanding the data to work collectively. How are you going to prioritize your work? Unfortunately, we're so far behind, that we might have overplayed this because the staff are saying there's too much. And I only shared this because I think we have a good plan in place, a very detailed plan. And as you recall, and I shared this with you before, you can easily spot it, and I have handouts if you wanted it. SFA has identified it probably takes 3 years to really get everything in place. Okay, and then it's always a continuous improvement thereafter. That, and they call it the snapshot. And I shared that with you before. If you look at it, there's so much detail in there. And it says what should come first, what's next. And part of this is also recognizing and walking through with the principal and the SFA facilities, how are we doing? Is what percentage of your teachers understand this application are doing this? Because it's getting it to, from basic to mastery almost. Okay, and it's moving you right through. So there's a lot of information in there, and that's why I think it would be beneficial even to say, how many strategies does SFA touch? But again, we need to come back to, at some point in time here soon, we've identified 3 goals. What's next on the list? In terms of how do we start moving into this? And so this is a little bit about a work in progress, meaning that continued refinement, extending it out, and continuing to do some of this. But when you, and again, getting ahead, because I also want to report on the school board superintendent, school business official convention. There was a lot of reinforcing information, like the first general session I forget, it's not Stephen Covey, it's his son.
Sean.
And I wasn't able to get there, even though I read all the books. But essentially, his last one that he was also selling was that when you look at your strategic plan, he says that's your whirlwind. That's business that you have to do. But if you don't pull out priorities like you did, even though it would say limit it to 1 or 2 and do it well, we're up to 3. I just say what you did is reinforced by what we heard, okay? Also, I would identify, going back to the literacy, the last closing person was literacy action plan from birth to 6. The state and everybody else now is saying we're in a crisis in the state, if not the country. And the Reading for Our Life said, if this isn't your top priority, you're missing it. And in fact, if you recall, and Carrie and Stacy could add to this, her statement was the significance of this was so important when you look at any additional work. It's saying how important reading is. Remember, she must have repeated it 5 times. Right?
It's pretty redundant.
Reading is more important than your next item you want to do, and your next item you want to do, your next item you want to do. And yet her message was back to parents. We need to get kids ready for, from preschool, which we're also addressing. So it was really a very good meeting there. And I just highlight a couple things that were significant. We'll talk a little bit more. But, with the SFA implementation, if you stop to think, if I can recall all the things that are embedded in it, distributed leadership, cooperative learning. Kids, there's a great deal of research that kids learn from other kids more than they do sometimes the teacher. Okay, and that's this level of engagement. I might raise the question right now in terms of how many board members have been able to sit in to see SFA in action. I mean, and so that's where we're going to start getting that. And Matt's been on me, Matt's been on me to get him scheduled in. But, some of the challenges, it's where we've got 2 buildings that are dealing with interim principals. I mean, we're in that transition. And so we're still working to get Matt in there because he's been hounding me in terms of wanting to take through, so that I've now spent, I think, 2 or 3 classrooms in a whole hour-and-a-half session. Just sitting in, and the teachers, it was volunteer, they wanted me to sit in. It was wonderful. That's not to say that there isn't a lot of work, but you need to see it if you haven't. And I think anybody who's been there, we already had some reports out. I'm not sure, Chris, if you shared, but, I do get feedback in terms of you're out there and understanding some of this stuff. And it's amazing what happens when the board recognizes central office and board members really know what's going on. It's really powerful, okay? So again, going back, so we got cooperative learning, we got distributive leadership. If there's a lot of leverage in here, we have obviously literacy, we got the reading block. So a teacher isn't thinking, geez, I got a 3 to 4 grade span in my classrooms, and my strategy has been taking 4 aside, have everybody else on silent reading or some other project, and I'm going to work with these. And then I pull 4 more. This says, no, let's do the whole class. Let's put them at their reading level so we can advance them. And it's not just some, all are getting reading instruction. And I shared with you in terms of, because we're just getting data now for the second quarter. And we went from 6%.
Can I just explain what you just said, like kind of common sense wise?
Yep.
To me, it felt like the kids were going to social studies or gym class. So when the bell rang, the students went to a different classroom. It was like no different than they were going to their gym class in that period of time. So the whole group of students that went to that classroom that was their home, like almost a homeroom or like their gym class, where it was like just a transition between periods. And then they were being engaged at their level, consistency the whole time. And there wasn't like a scarlet letter whatsoever. There wasn't no ousting them that they were good. The logistics of how the SFA coordinator grouped the students so they didn't have to walk all the way across the school was amazing. How the logistics of where the students went and the groups of students in their classrooms, it was seamless. So I just want to put some common sense to what you just said. It wasn't like this pull out and then we're going to go put you in this back corner of the school. It was completely seamless. No inhibitants of.
Matt, where were you? Just to tell everybody what school were you
I was
at?
at Franklin Elementary School, which I was completely amazed with about the preloading that was done by the SFA coordinator and the support that the principal gave the coordinator, and then the implementation that was being done was just amazing. But it took all 3 of those people, and then including the reviews I was asking about. Well, is Jim there? Is he helping out? And the SFA coordinator kept on telling me he has been there whenever I needed him to, if there was any questions. Jamie has been amazing, talking through problems. And then I said, well, have you been able to share with other schools of your success? And the SFA coordinator said, yeah, I try to. However, I have to be kind of careful because I have to be respectful, just so that I don't step on anybody's toes. But I'm like, yeah, we need to get this information out as much as possible. But just the amount of organization and how much, how everything was down to a T of actually where the students' location of their classroom was just amazing. I could just tell the attention to detail was at such a high level that I just wanted to scream it. And that's why I'm saying it publicly now. But if we just have some more time to see the fruits of our labor, it's just amazing. Because I saw kids engaged all the way up to the last 5 minutes of the classroom. Instead of them packing up and waiting by the door, which I've seen many, many times, that was not the case whatsoever. So I just want to highlight how proud I am of that school and where it's come. And they were doing good, but I'm just saying how much of an improvement I've seen on the organization is just amazing. So I just wanted to kind of bring it back to common ground of what you were talking about. Because sometimes you use big words and people can't understand you all the time.
All right, let's,
So going into the next item, culture, clearly we did not have good results at the end of last year. And as we presented those to you, and that sent us back in terms of let's dipstick in terms of find out where we're this year. And then again, we still have concerns. And so what we did with that in terms of how do we better understand this, that we're not on the same page. And so we're into the listening sessions right now. And I can tell you they've been extremely valuable and well received, in terms of the information that we're getting. We just had 2 today.
yes.
So which we, McKinley and Jackson, in both extremely valuable. In a lot of common ground, some unique stuff. Class size, unique to a school, was a new issue that we're trying to, and behavior, different levels of behavior But that's another thing, that we are again, really trying to understand this deep. And there's still more follow-up that we'll even go back to some of these sites for additional information because it was really revealing, in terms of the dialogue that we started. So,
What was revealing? What was?
well, one of the things that we recognize how complex behavior is. And yet they were talking about teachers getting bitten and bruised and almost like it was more prevalent. And it took us back a little bit because we recognize, sometimes it's classroom management, sometimes it is, most definitely significant, behavior needs. We recognize, but it was just a little bit more detailed in such a way that we need to go back. So it was kind of revealing, and this was what's great about the listening session, where we're really kind of following up on that. So just extremely beneficial.
How are you guys following up on that?
I'll have lunch with them on Thursday
Okay,
with the staff.
and that's the purpose of that is to,
I want to hear how prevalent those things are and if it's isolated to one student, two students.
okay, what does that look like?
So and we mentioned before and talked about the complexity of this professional development, this thinking around when are we providing enough, but it's complex, and that's what we don't want to assume that we got the total picture, and that's what these listening sessions are doing. They're helping us in that regard. The last item was facilities planning. It's moving really nicely, but it just reminds me about how far we're behind, just like we were on the literacy front, that we need to get on top of this. This has got to move. But there's a lot of work in terms of getting people to understand it, start looking at options, and costs in terms of, how do we proceed with this referendum? What are we going to do? But it's still kind of preliminary. We just need to bring you up to speed in terms of where we're at right now before March. So with that, then, a lot of the stuff I think I reported, you have this, you see the highlights in there. I even have.
I want to talk about culture a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had the facility that I went to, Franklin. So when I originally went there, there was kind of like a needs list, and they were like, yeah, throw it in the bucket, see if it happens, and it'll never happen. And then I came back this last time, and there was a couple of things that I thought were needs, not just wants, and those needs were completed. And the culture of the staff that were talking to me said, yeah, it took 6 years, but we finally got that. And now we have. And we're taking care of the students now at this facility because we have those tools. Another thing was, there was something simple like hanging a TV was never done. And I was flabbergasted, and yeah, it hasn't been done in 3 years. And then I go there just randomly, and I brought it up, but it was done. So culture-wise, and then I asked the SFA coordinator how the culture was with their staff, and she repeated that, there was a big transition, and it was hard, and we got through it, but we're a united front, and we're not having any difficulties. And then I randomly asked a teacher before I went through the SFA, and it happened to be, they said that, once you give this a chance, there is latitude to go left and right. However, if you're a beginning teacher, it gives you a great platform to start off of, so that you can be very organized with the lessons. And I said, well, is it too scripted? And she's like, well, it is very, very pointed, but there is extra days built in so that you can do different things. And, I wasn't a believer in the beginning, but now I can see how this is working really, really well. And yes, we need to incorporate a writing part of it, which we've been addressing the whole time since the beginning. And I asked, well, how are we going to do that? And she said, well, they have a writing program with it, but we could add a little bit to it, enhance to it as well. So I just wanted to touch on culture and how that facility was addressing it right head on, and they had a very positive attitude. And then that's why I brought up a few meetings ago. I said, well, that this interaction of the SFA model into the other subjects, I'm just so excited about because of the cooperative learning extending throughout the rest of the day. So that's why I'm really excited to see the results of how we can continue that model into the rest of the day. But the staff was very, very energetic and very positive in that facility about how things were going. Yes, there was apprehension in the beginning because we don't like change no matter what. But they were seeing that they were meeting. One person said, just come and look at the lights in their eyes of the students just light up when they see that they can learn how to start reading at their level. and they're not ostracized because they're with a bunch of other peers that are at the same level. You just got to come and see it. So that's the testimony I got when I was there as well.
Thanks,
And
Matt.
just the culture is very improved.
So Jim, if you could just,
Right. So I
Wrap
think,
up,
I
that'd
think, I think some of these are self-explanatory. We've talked about them, but, right now you have the, moving down, then you've got these various pillars and you can see that we're working, a lot of these things are under SFA, some of them are not. They're the curriculum, a lot of data, a lot of engagement. So that's the student achievement one. If we move to the next one, we get into the student culture and some of the things that we are doing. And we had that ad hoc group, but there's still more that needs to be done in this area. The next one is this is the faculty and staff and administration and culture relative to this other big goal. And we highlighted some of this, the listening segments are extremely well, but you can see there are many component parts there. And there's more to this. We try to kind of collapse it.
Concerning student culture, there was a fairly extensive article in the paper yesterday about the mental health crisis in Wisconsin, which is, I heard a lot about that at the WASB convention as well. And I went to sessions that talked about how various schools are kind of contending with that. I don't think we even know how, I don't, as a board member, I don't think we even know what that part of the student culture is here. I mean, how serious is the epidemic of anxiety, depression, and emotional desperation in our schools? And I think we need to know that, and we need to respond to it in professional ways. So I don't know if that's changing a priority or not, but
Well, I think it's
that demands some kind of attention.
I think it's significant, and that's where you hear the social emotional learning in terms of what that means in terms of, the mental healthness. That's what we are kind of hearing today. We don't want to take anything for granted.
The student surveys that we do every year, do they ask questions about mental health?
Yes.
They do?
Yeah.
So,
Specific questions
You
about
know-
depression
you
and
know the
substance
answers to
abuse.
that.
So we, Michael Morgan actually was one of the first mental health coordinators and safety coordinators in the state of Wisconsin, and just about every district now has that. And we're very fortunate to have Nirmana Trilek, who has stepped in to fill that role. And we are so fortunate to have mental health providers in clinician form come in to provide services to students with identified needs right in our school buildings. We have a pretty comprehensive amount of school-based mental health supports and services available to students. The state has a number of grants that help schools and districts fund additional programming to target mental health. But as difficult as it is to put a number on
Yes.
exactly the student, I think what we know about our school and our learning communities individually and at large is that if there's this happening in our community at large, it is happening on a smaller scale within each and every one of our buildings. So what we do through the work of our school counseling team is try to get resources quickly to students where there is a need. And so we have school-based mental health services in just about every one of our sites right now, with partnerships with Rogers from Sheboygan, who are considering even doing some outpatient therapy groups for students with an identified need that would use our facilities. So they're, Nirmana, again, is constantly working with our community partners to help have students have quick, easy access on site. Some of those have insurance costs associated with them, and some are free to students based on those identified needs. So we're trying to be as responsive as possible, knowing that there is a clinician shortage in our community as well, in our state as well.
Yeah, okay.
I just wanted to mention, maybe, and I'm sure not in all cases, but the culture and the student success being tied in together. Before we implemented SFA, I know I had quite a concern with even my daughter's reading and everything else and how she was learning to read. Just today, she came home and informed me that she's gone up to another level. She's increased 3 levels in her reading since this has been implemented. And with that being done, I also see an increase in her understanding of her other subjects that she's doing. In all aspects, which in turn, in my opinion, maybe not for culture, but for mental health, I see a change as well in her just from being more successful at her school work. So, I mean, there's a little bit that's tied in there as well too, because she's been doing amazing. And the only regrets I have is that we weren't able to implement this earlier and years ago. Her whole life would have been changed differently. So.
Katie, I was going to say, I mean, this is another one of those examples where I think, like recently you sent out that memo, or someone sent us the memo about the mental health stuff that's happening in our schools. I don't remember who sent us all that
Might have been
email.
Nirvana.
I think it was Nirvana, you're right. So again, I think that if we had very similar to that dashboard that you had, also having our mental health resources, because actually I think again, I'm probably biased here, but I think from when we look at other schools in our community, we're knocking it out of the park when it comes to servicing these students. We have resources that we're already doing with regard to mental health that we're already doing and have been doing. And I think that, again, that's another thing that I think we need to highlight to the board, so they know that, yes, we do have those programs and we're doing them right here.
So I want to be very careful how I say this. So I completely understand if there's a trauma and you need support systems, it's completely understandable. However, I like to think of it on a proactive solution. Like if you have your curriculum, set up so that you're engaging the students and you're giving them a challenge and you're always engaging them, and they're seeing the successes or the failures or the growth, that they continue to be engaged in their classroom, and they're not at idle, and they're not more apt to have behavioral issues. So I completely understand of traumas. However, if you have a clear path, which I think that's what we're trying to attack right now, a clear reason and a hard work ethic to try to strive to give each individual a purpose. I remember when I would swim, having a personal best, I would be the worst swimmer in the pool, literally as the worst person in the pool. But if I kept beating my personal best, I kept wanting to come back for more and more. And I think you just articulated that, Matt, with your daughter's experiences with getting up to the next reading level. So there's something to say about having a positive attitude and working hard and then seeing a little bit of results.
Absolutely.
To completely have a better mental health status. But I understand if there's a trauma completely, and the supports, and like you said, Stacy, we're knocking it out of the park as a reactionary or even a little bit of preventative. But I think it's ultimately how much are we engaging our students and how much are we leaving them idle to actually have problems. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Hey, Jim, I'm going to cut you off.
Okay,
I just had a couple of questions. Strategic plan, do we have any key performance indicators that we measure if we're doing anything with that plan? What are our key performance indicators for the 5 pillars?
we do.
Are they in writing somewhere? So we can see them, so we
We'll
can
send them.
evaluate? We need to evaluate it. We need to have an instrument to know if we're actually making progress.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, elsewhere on your report, talk about the threats.
Okay, so moving into the one list in terms of the SWOT analysis. Okay, one of the threats that we have is the staffing problem. Okay, in terms of not only we're recognizing this as state and national, it's impacting us and it's compounding itself, to the extent that we're into a major transition and we're short. I mean, one of the things we talked about today was large classes in one particular school. So we're kind of examining that. We have positions out there and we're not able to fill them. I mean, so there's some real challenges that everybody's facing, including us. Okay, so that's a major issue, and while we can do some things, for example, in terms of, as an example, we recognize we couldn't get subs. Well, it was a competitive thing. Mike, found out, did a little digging, raised the rates, and all of a sudden, not for long-term subs, but for short-term, we're back in the game. And we're already getting feedback they're already noticing that in the schools.
Jim, I'm going to back up for just a second, because I think that, do you have specific questions about the threats?
I was looking at that and I think you're correct, staffing is a threat. My concern is I've heard some of the classes are very large. Are we that short in the elementary schools? Is there some way to do something with coaches to get more people?
Suggesting that shouldn't be a threat added, you mean?
Well, I guess my concern is what are we doing to address that threat? Because when I hear 20 plus, 25 plus kids in a class, 30 kids in a class,
People call me.
and then kids at different grade levels that we were told that would not be in, like fourth graders and first graders, fifth graders with second graders, we were told that wouldn't happen here, and it happens.
Yeah.
That bothers me. The other thing on the threats is, you know, there's one threat about issues dividing our country and local groups that cause problems. Let's just educate kids and not deal with those things, and then we won't have that as a threat. You know, and I've said this before, one of the groups that you think is a threat helped you pass the last referendum. And will they do that for the next one? I don't know. So you have to find a way to work with people and get out of the politics of this and just educate kids so those threats go away.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, if the three goals the superintendent has do have specific and clear metrics that are all tied to the strategic plan. So looking at the reading scores specifically on the implementation of SFA, so that's one of the measurables we have. The second goal we have is the staff surveys, right? So obviously we got some work to do there, but that was one of the metrics. And the third one was the completion of that building facilities assessment. So they're all, if you look at, and I'll email this to the board, but I just looked up the document and we actually have that.
I want the performance for the 5 pillars of the strategic plan. If they're going to have a strategic plan, you have to have performance indicators letting us know if we're reaching what that plan is.
Yep, yeah, and
Okay.
I think Jim touched on that earlier, correct me if I'm wrong, when he said we can't really focus on 10,000 things.
Yeah, we got over 100 strategies on that, you know, and you, I think, strategically recognize if all these are priority, nothing's a priority, and you identify priorities, and those are the 3 goals that you said, this is your work, and that's what we're taking on.
Great. Yeah, and then the final thing I'd like to add is, Vic, to your point on removing politics from the equation, I agree with you wholeheartedly. That shouldn't be in the equation at all. But I'd like to remind everyone that a few years ago, there were a lot of political propagandas up on the wall in some of our schools. So it's a two-way street there. I think that everyone agrees with what you said. I think we just need to find that common ground and focus, which is the student achievement.
I think we're talking about the board. We're not talking about the whole school system on this, are we?
I thought we were talking about student achievement, success.
I'm talking about
in general.
Just in general.
Well,
getting it out of education completely.
correct.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I just wanted to point out, it's really a two-way street, and I hear you guys talk about it a lot, but it's not a one-sided thing at all. And I think as a board, we've done a good job of narrowing our focus, and we need to stay focused on that, really, quite frankly. We're making great progress. I don't know if you guys saw Jim's email earlier today, but there's a lot that's encouraging, and we need to really rally together and stay focused on the big thing.
Yeah, and then really, we gotta move on.
I just want to talk about staffing.
Close the
about
close
how,
down.
I was so proud of the paraprofessionals at Franklin, how the SFA coordinator was able to use those paraprofessionals for extra lower class sizes. Yeah, once first quarter was over, she utilized them and to have their own classrooms on the catch-up time. I wish she was here to explain it herself, but it was amazing. And I would really ask the administrative team to dive in to ask her how she was able to do that. And I know it was in support with the principal of how they were able to maneuver their paraprofessionals to be able to have the ratios lower at Franklin Elementary because of how they set up their schedule. So I just want to just say thank you to them on how good they're doing. And I just want to talk about how the SFA coordinator was able to solve the staffing issue at that, and is with Jamie and Jim's assistance. But I just want to, we should be using that as a template for other schools, how we can solve the staffing issues for the ratios for the student to teacher. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I will just add is that Franklin is a title school, is that correct?
Correct.
So there are certain requirements that Franklin can do that other elementaries cannot. So that is another thing that really binds our hands with class size and things because,
You're referring to AGR?
Yes.
They are an AGR school?
yes,
Yes,
yeah, which is the gap reduction, right?
yes, reduction.
So that just might, I just want to let everyone know
Thank
that
you.
it's not just a matter of taking exactly what we do at Franklin, because the staffing is different and a lot of other things because of how the school is.
Still talk about things.
You can, absolutely. I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Okay,
So that's all that I have for the
Okay.
comments.
thanks. We're going to have you move into the WASB
Yeah,
convention.
just in terms of really significant, what I found really substantial in this convention that I haven't necessarily seen as much in others. And it kind of ties into what Vic was surfacing in terms of there's a lot of stuff out there in the community that is coming into our schools. And the laws regarding this, whether or not Title IX regarding the First Amendment, it's substantial. And so one of the things that the board president and I decided to do was try to split our time, and I missed the first Wednesday session, so I missed some, but I included some of the handouts so you get some flavor about what we're challenged with in terms of needing to understand.
And Carrie, you went to, did you go to the one on challenges to curriculum in the classroom too?
No, I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I included just some of those handouts. But I felt like, as Stacy and I were looking in terms of, okay, we need to provide information, context, so the board can make decisions on some of the policies. And Stacy and I were talking in terms of, geez, the whole board needs to see some of this relative to some of the challenges. And so then our conversation carried, but the public is not understanding what we're working, the context that we're working with these laws. And so what we suggested, and we were attending a conference put on by Bob Butler. He's one of the attorneys at the School Board Association, who I think is just really good. And we're also recognizing people are looking in terms of, geez, is this a preferred attorney to give you an opinion versus, and we're wanting to just make sure that the board is informed. And then we started thinking the public needs to be informed. And so we just bounced it off Bob about his coming to do a forum or, a session, which is the whole board could, and the public. And then we can move into some of these policies with a deeper understanding of it, because we really recognize, we talked about surveys. Can we get surveys on mental issues and these? You can't do that survey without getting parent consent on many of these things. So there's things you need to know. You just can't go out there and try to collect data. So there is a lot that we have to, the parameters we have to work in is pretty significant. So that's what I'd like to help with.
Yeah, so what I'd like to propose to the board was to have, and Biff, to your point, I mean, there were about 6 different legal workshops that all dealt with basically the political issues on both sides that are coming to the forefront here and that are making all schools in the state of Wisconsin like this as well. So what we thought, I want to make sure that if we tell Jim to do this, that we're on board doing this, is that we have a public forum, and it's not a school board meeting, like a public forum where we have this attorney from WASB, which is from the School Board Association, so not any one side, but just to tell us the facts about what are in these laws regarding policy. So not only the community, but the board knows and can ask questions about what we can and cannot do. And I think sometimes the community thinks we can do something that we can't, and vice versa. And so I really think that not only do we need to have a very clear understanding about it, but I think our community does it well. So I would like to tell Jim to go ahead and initiate this after this meeting as quickly as we can, so that we can take up these policies, get everybody who wants to come and be part of this to listen and hear, and that, the board members can ask their questions as well. So I'm looking for some feedback regarding that proposal.
And Stacy, if I could just add, just as an example, and hopefully I took away what I thought I got. One of the issues that came up was when we were talking about can transgenders use the locker rooms? And essentially it was, yes, they can, but they can't undress. I mean, so if I remember that, and it's not just.
And the problem too comes down to is that right now, even in the country, the District 7, which we are in, court came down and said one thing. District 11 came down and said another thing. So now you have these two competing big courts. They brought it to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court last Tuesday said, we're not going to touch it. So now we are still in this this flux of what do we do? So I think this attorney made it I just think it would be really good. He comes out and says, this is the law. This is what you can and can't do. This is what you can put in your policy. These are the parameters. This is what you can work with. But this is it. And right now, until things get legislated and whatever. So I just think it would be a good path forward, a neutral for everybody to hear what we can and can't do. And then go with these policies that have been tabled, take those up with the knowledge that we have and move forward. So suggestions, thoughts, yay, nay?
I think it's a good idea. I would just strongly recommend avoiding the rest of January and February so that you don't schedule it and then it gets weathered out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, by late February, you're pretty close. But I'm just saying, early February, let's not have weather ruin this. Everybody's going to make plans.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I think the board needs to make a decision and then the district needs to implement it. So I think the 7 of us need to make a yes or no vote with which way we want to go with the policy. I think that needs to be clear. And then the school district, I mean, that's what the whole purpose of school board is, isn't it? To be a representation of the community. So,
right. What I'm suggesting though is that we, again, I think that even going and listening to this, it is so complex. Your head is like with the legalese of all this stuff. So what I'm suggesting is that the policies will absolutely be our vote, our voice to do that. I just think that everybody on this board, along with our community that wants to be part of it, needs to be on the same page of what the law says so that we can make those decisions in a very informed manner.
So who's the
I have a reservation about that, in that, it really is complex stuff. It's really, really complex stuff. And it seems to me that it's sort of the work of administrators to know what the policies are and interpret them to the board. I mean, I don't see the utility in, gathering all the troops here and doing that. I mean, I do think, however, I went to a number of sessions that dealt with community relations, and the thing that first struck me is that most of the school systems in Wisconsin are very small.
Yes.
So community is pretty reachable for them. They're part of it, and the community is part of them, and all that sort of stuff. But in a middle-sized city like this, I think it's somewhat problematic, and I think that we really haven't talked about how we want to relate to this community and how we then implement that relationship. And I think it's pretty important. I mean, I don't think we use social media at all in this school system. I haven't seen it, and I don't think our website.
We just passed policy last meeting. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, yeah.
About they can only use time and date location of events through social media. That was policy.
Well, no, I mean, we have a Facebook page
I understand.
that pumps
Yeah.
out stuff all the time. All our school groups do, I mean, I believe we even have,
But that's informational.
Twitter.
I'm talking about engaging people in the, the real issues of the system.
You had a.
okay, so Carrie, what I'm, just to summarize, you would say that this would not be something that you would support, having the.
Yeah, I'm not real enthusiastic about it.
Right.
I think it's important, don't get me wrong, but I think it's,
Okay.
I'm not a lawyer.
Who's the attorney that we're gonna have here?
His name is
Bob Butler.
Bob Butler.
I mean, that's who I would be trying to.
He is, he did this presentation and, he's worked with Jim, before, so he would be the one.
Yeah, and I guess the reason I asked that question is I almost think if we're gonna go through this, it would be worth it to have someone that's not only knowledgeable about the law, but also the Constitution and specifically, how laws are formed and created in this country.
Why do we need that?
Well, the reason I
Explain
think we
that.
need, I gladly. That's a great question, Carrie. So the reason I bring that up is I think that, specific to policy 2260, that's been kicking around for a while. I think what ends up happening is that unelected bureaucrats, in many cases, they end up arbitrarily changing the definition of things and then molding that into an existing law. So the way I look at that is if a law is passed 20 or 30 years ago for Title IX, and then someone today decides to change the definition of gender, I'm not sure that's a constitutionally clear law or that's passed lawful. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it makes all sorts of sense, but I don't think we can adjudicate that sort of stuff though.
Well, I'm not sure we
You
can
know.
adjudicate it, but I think it's worth knowing, and I think our public should know that there is a lawful process that we create laws in this country. And if that's not followed, then I think it's fair to question the legitimacy of any laws or decrees
But
that come down.
that's what lawsuits are about.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
potentially.
Which is.
I mean, we can all have opinions, but they cut nothing, I mean.
So
other
other,
than being
other
opinions.
discussion though about having this person come. I know, so
Yeah.
you're saying that you'd like somebody that can talk about,
I just want someone that's a constitutional expert, because people can say all day, like, well, here's my interpretation of the law, which is fair, right? I mean, you're gonna have varying opinions on that, but really what I wanna know is, are these actual laws that were passed constitutionally, or is this a law that's 30 years old, and then someone 2 years
Wow,
ago
that's
decided to
revelation
change
brief, though.
the definition of gender, and now it's gonna, cause all this stuff that we're trying to avoid,
Right.
right? So that's
right, and
what I'm getting.
I, just going to that presentation, I think that you will get to hear the answer to that question on gender. Yeah.
I would be interested in it. Part of the problem is a constitutional expert. You've got that on the Supreme Court and they don't agree on what's right with the Constitution. So it really comes back to law. And if you want to change a law, you have to work through that process to change it. Otherwise, you're going to have a court throw it out and make a decision for you. So to have an expert, you may bring an expert in, but the other expert from the other side is going to say something different. What we have to watch out as a board is if we start passing policies that take away civil rights, we're going to get in trouble. We may agree. We may all say 7-0 that this is bad.
Yeah.
But if it goes against
Yeah,
the
right.
civil rights of a person, we're not going to win that.
But I think that's part of the understanding the First Amendment rights. I mean, so a lot of this was Biff, just what you're surfacing was making everybody aware of that, and yet you have a board fully.
And to that point, they will talk to you, they will specifically talk about what was interpretation, right? And what was the law, and then why specifically this issue with gender came up based on a legal decision that was made. So I just think, and you will be able to ask those questions to the attorney and be very specific. Does this show me in the Constitution or whatever the law that specifically says it? And I think that that is what we need as a board and as a community, so everybody knows today, when we make these decisions, this is what it says.
And let me go back to Carrie. One of my concerns, Carrie, is that before, when I brought up this idea of talking about or having something, we were kind of saying, don't go there, don't bring this up. Well, I as an administrator need to know where the board's at in terms of, I don't want to go down a road thinking that, I'm watching costs, and then all of a sudden it blows up on me because I didn't necessarily have this discussion with you, and that we have an agreement. As an example, I think I've heard, reading between the lines, that one is you went and support CRT, critical race theory, and two, you said we don't have it in our schools. Well, I'm trying to study this to figure out what is going on, and I, so I just need to know where we're at, so that I don't set you up and then, how do I read the board relative to what's our values and beliefs and what are we attempting to accomplish, so I kind of understand the parameters. And it's becoming challenging. I'd raise it with, a new thing out there in terms of, can you define it for me? What is this national movement for diversity, equity, inclusion? I don't know. It's different than when I remember it from before.
Sure.
And these are some things so that it means what it is in the legal context.
But I think, go ahead, Matt, first.
I was just gonna say that, I guess in context, I have to agree with what Jeff says, because no matter what we say on here, if it goes against the law, it's something that we can get in trouble. So you have to make a decision on your own, as I have. I personally could care, and I'll go on record saying it, I care less if the entire Supreme Court walks in here and tells me I gotta do something. If it goes against what I believe, I'm not gonna vote for it. I do not care. So that has to be something you're gonna have to take a personal stance on. But can it go and get us in trouble? Absolutely. We have to be understanding that is exactly what it is. We can implement anything we want, but if it goes against the law,
And I think.
I just want to make an informed decision.
One other thing, though, I'd like to say is that with regard to that is, what I've learned is that even if we write a policy one way, and it's the way that we feel like we are being legally responsible to do it, if another group interprets it, or another person, individual, whatever, interprets it as breaking the law, then it's going to go to court. Yeah. So either way that any of our policies are written, we could get sued because they want to make the case that this is wrong and I have a right to do this, which is why a lot of things come. However, I still think that if we can't talk about this as a board, how do we expect anybody else to talk about it and make informed decisions? And that's what I'd like to get to, is I want everybody here to have that knowledge of what is in the law and what we can and cannot do, so we can make that informed decision. And I think that these, when you have almost 10 breakout sessions that have to do with all these issues, and it's complicated, every single one of them, I think that means that we need to be pretty informed before we start making policy on things that we don't totally have a grasp on. So that's all I'm saying is why I think that this would be a good idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, and I agree with a lot of what you said there, but I just want to remind everyone that not that long ago, there were a lot of people in this country that thought it would be a good idea to require, vaccinations, for example, to enter into a grocery store, things like that. And a lot of people were getting on board with that, right? And then people were passing those types of policies, and then eventually it got overturned, right? So there's a lot of court challenges going on. Right. And I think at the end of the day, they may not take every case, but I think eventually, this is going to continue to get challenged. And I think we need to be mindful that, we have to comply with the law. I acknowledge that. And we should comply with the law, but if there's a good chance, and I think there is a good chance in this case, that something could get overturned and whatever happens with the legal challenges, then I don't want to tie us to a bad policy if that's going to get overturned eventually. If that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah,
So
and
that's,
it does. And again, what I think this attorney is going to give us expertise on is if there is concern about some of these things, these are the things that you can do. You know, to keep to respect the law as it is written and also provide the safeguards and the things that, you know, again, they tell you what things that you can do and what things that you absolutely by law cannot come out and have this written based on their opinion, right? Based on their legal professional piece.
I just want to come at that from the complete opposite direction.
Yeah.
In that I really believe in democratic discord, you know, small d,
Yeah.
democratic discord. And I really think it's a good idea in a democratic republic to have bodies that consist of citizens who are not expected to be experts and all of this stuff, to come together, assess what needs to be done, you know, to the best of their ability, prudently devise a plan and a program, et cetera, to address those things, and then in good faith, you know, move forward. And I think at the point of moving forward is when you want to ask the lawyers. Rather than like, you know, trying to be lawyers and then try to sort of second guess all the variations and possibilities. And I never went to law school. I don't know, did anybody go to law school? I don't think that should inhibit us at all from being active citizens in a democratic republic. I mean, I just don't think. Screw it. I mean, you know, you know, all the rules. I mean, I believe in the rule of law, but it's sort of like it really is. It's strangling prudent thought, I think. And I think that we should be thoughtful first, and legal. We should cover our ass legally when we're moving forward.
Matt, and then Matt, and
I
then.
just want to tell everybody on the board and everybody's listening, thank you, because this is a democratic process and everybody's being respectful
Yeah.
and there's nobody storming the stage. I just want to say thank you because we can have these discussions that are hard, but we're doing it in a respectful manner.
Oh, yeah, we always have, haven't we?
Thanks,
Since
Matt.
we've been here.
Yeah, since you've been here. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that as far as, I understand that this is a democratic process, but we don't live in a democratic republic. We live in a constitutional republic. In a democratic republic, a mob rules can take away anybody's rights at any point in time. In our society, we have a constitutional document that says these are things that cannot be taken away from us. We do not live in a democratic republic. But that's just my opinion. Go ahead.
Well, so I'd like to take I mean, this is not up for vote, but, you know, I'd like to give Jim the go-ahead if the majority, you know, if we have a consensus that we move forward with this, so.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. I agree.
Chris? Yep. Biff? You're okay?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
so what are we voting on?
Well, we're not really voting, but I'm trying to get a
We're just getting a
consensus whether or
consensus,
not to
yeah.
go ahead with this,
Public
public
forum,
forum.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay,
I'm always eager to learn.
okay, perfect.
You said public forum, so does the public be able to ask questions? So
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely, absolutely.
It's to elevate the level of understanding. That's really what I see it as doing. So you have a better understanding of, okay, this is what the law is now that I understand.
Sure,
With
sure.
a little bit more depth.
I think it's
And
a
I
good
can still
idea.
raise questions and find out if I got issues, and then I vote my conscience.
I think it's a good idea.
Yep. Okay, thank you, everybody. Anything else you want to say about WASB? I'm not gonna let you.
I don't know, I'll just say that all the,
get any. Just the.
No, we Carrie, let's.
all the resolutions were passed, and the two that tried to come up, one was the, you know, transgender males can't participate in. They didn't accept that for discussion or action because, you know, it hadn't gone to all school boards, and it, you know, and people didn't want to vote on something they hadn't hadn't talked to their peers with. And also the multilingual issue in the
Milwaukee
it didn't come up either.
Okay.
But everything you got passed. And two things surprised me. One thing that surprised me is that, wow, most of those things passed by way big margins. But when amendments came up that tried to kind of tweak it and refine it in some ways, the body was very conservative, very conservative. And I think it in part reflected the fact that Wisconsin education consists of a lot of small town and rural school districts. So it was, that's just my experience.
Thank you for doing that, Carrie. That's a lot of extra work. We appreciate
No, it
it.
wasn't.
I did pop my head in. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Neat process.
That's what too.
Okay, so moving on, unfinished business. Okay, I put this on our agenda because the election was held and they elected two alternates.
Oh, yeah.
And we only put one in our policy. So I just wanted to go ahead and put that out here and hopefully get a motion in a second to just amend our policy to have up to two.
Well, we don't even have to do that.
Anything anyway but their own. That's what's going on.
I would have moved to amend to 2 instead of 1.
Are you?
Do we have a second?
I'm just gonna, I just think the amendment should say, and they need an alternate as well.
Well, it
You know,
says,
And that could be anybody, maybe not elected, but, anybody that they decide. Well, whatever.
okay, anyway, well, we have a,
The idea when I talked to Matt the other night is that they wanted 2 kind of as an alternate, just in case, but they wanted
An
to,
alternate for the alternate?
right, they wanted to make sure it was an elected position.
Okay.
okay, so we have a motion to make that amendment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Chris seconded, okay, great. Any further discussion?
I think I did.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for drafting it. I think it was appropriate with one alternate, so I'm gonna be voting no because I think one alternate is appropriate. It's my opinion.
These are a lot of the most involved kids, so I can realistically see if you have 2 people, there could be a day when they both have something else going on.
Yeah.
And so I can see them wanting a second.
Back up. Yeah.
So I'm okay either way.
any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
I'll move that we accept the proposal as amended.
Second.
okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
It's so negative.
So we talked about, you're so negative, isn't it? So we already talked about, we wanted to do this, we're gonna table these and we're gonna have that and, again, we don't want to, I respect what you said about the weather. Want to get this, because I don't want this to, I don't want to table these forever. Anyway, so then we go on to new business, proposal for the additional SLPs. And is that, Katie, okay, go for it.
So you should have in front of you justification for the proposal that our speech and language pathology team put together. So we currently provide services for 457 students who have a wide variety of communication needs, some more minimal, like an articulation disorder, and some more comprehensive that would require some assistive communication devices and things like that. We currently have a team of 11 speech and language pathologists. We have one therapist serving in a hybrid model, so she provides some virtual therapy services, and then a blend of in-person therapy services. And students receiving virtual services have a paraprofessional that sits with them and provides some in-person assistance for that therapy service delivery model.
We currently have 67 referrals for speech since the beginning of the school year. 43 of those are at our preschool level. So before December 31st of this year, so we're projecting over 70 new students for the school year at just the preschool level. So if you kind of harken back to the open enrollment caseload recommendations, right now we are currently at about a 41 average caseload size. That's not taking into consideration those different levels of need. So adding 70 additional students is going to significantly outload the workload capacity of our speech and language pathologists. Then it gives them, the team did such a great job, and they're just such a wonderful, intelligent, hardworking group of people, that they collected some statewide data. So there's currently 73 openings for speech and language pathologists, and their pitch to us to hopping on this early and coming to the board early was because many positions will be filled in February and March based on student teaching assignments. So we want to get a little bit of a leg up, or at least put ourselves in the race for attracting highly qualified individuals to come and join our team. And we have a lot just to promote in regard to this team of individuals, and some other I think things that we need to promote that our district does well in relation to providing supports and services to our students. And then they included just some data. So there's a significant increase in young children who are developing communication disorders. A lot of that is pandemic related. A lot is screen time related. So just some really interesting information if you care to dig a little further into the need for this. It's just some great information they compiled about an increase, over 100% increase in young children developing communication disorders.
So I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the additional speech language.
So moved.
Okay, Biff and Chris says a second. And any discussion on that? Ma'am?
I will just say that this is the cost of masking our students. This is the result of it. If you look at the curriculum for early childhood or kindergarten, we're supposed to be able to see their mouths to be able to communicate, and that was not being done at all. And this is the cost of doing the decisions that were made in the past.
Okay,
Chris?
any other discussion? Yes, Chris.
First question, is this a proposal for next year or for the rest of this year?
Well, it's likely for next year. We're looking at projected numbers. If we could fill the position for someone who could start prior, then
So if you can find them, you'll take them.
we have absolutely,
pretty rare,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And my comment would be, having worked with many of our speech pathologists in the district, nobody is more excited to move a kid out of the speech program, besides the kid themselves, than the speech pathologist. They do amazing work, and it's important work, and everything we can do to get the numbers, to reduce the numbers, and that's all early intervention. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Biff.
Michael, is this a position where we could maybe find an intern from the real good who hasn't gone out yet?
That's always a possibility. We have 2 interns in the district right now, so that's definitely a possibility. But like Katie said, if we found an intern that we could bring in, we bring them in. Remember, in 22-23, we were down 1 SLP the whole year. At least right now, we're fully staffed, even though we've got these huge needs. So, yeah.
Great idea.
Anybody else? Okay. All those in favor of approving the 2 additional SLPs signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. I really appreciate it very much. Our staff and students will too, so thank you.
You bet. Okay, so the CISA 10 Owners Representative Agreement.
Yep.
And, okay, have you do a little presentation on that?
Just on this, what had happened when I was previously reporting, this work is really coming fast. We need to get ready for these next 2 summers and then also what we're going to do in the long term. But what we asked for a proposal because we're recognizing we need them now, but we need them only where we need them. And there's not a scope in here. And we don't want to sign a contract without specifically identifying what work they will work on. And they're totally willing with that. So I'm not recommending this. The contract will be similar to this, but it will have scope in there.
Thank you, that was exactly my worry.
Right, so I wanted to put it out there, instead of waiting for next Thursday, and then when we have it, I put it out there, then we started reviewing it, and we're saying the scope isn't identified. So they're kind of putting in additional time to start helping us identify projects, and then we'll say, yeah, we need to here, and here. And then we'll come back to have an agreement to support that. So right now, I'm not asking for a recommendation. Contract will be similar to this, but we'll have defined scope of work.
Any questions about that? Yeah.
So this is just a template, and next week we're gonna get more meat with it.
When we're ready to say we want them for this, we will have a contract. Now, Angela indicated, to the extent that this is in my authority and we have budget, to be able to, that I just wanted you to be aware, and that's why I was advancing it, again, wanting to make sure we're all on the same page with this. You recall that Nexus really pushed us without modifying the contract or having scope in there. And I had a problem with that. I think we all had a problem with that. And we don't want that. And they're totally sending it. They're just recognizing they'll start doing some stuff on their own to help us identify what projects. And we're going to say, yep, need you here, need you here, need you here. And then we'll come back, with that.
So I don't know if I'm the only one who had this problem, but when I was reviewing the attachments prior to this meeting, I kept looking at that and wondering, what am I looking at? Yeah. So it would just be helpful if in the future, if you could just put a few sentences like, hey, this is a sample, we're not going to vote on it, or, I guess I could see it was,
No.
It was just for, it says action, so I was just trying to figure out what it was, so.
No, and typically I would, being out at the conference, this came up, I didn't want to wait until Thursday, I wanted to get out there in front, but then as Mike and I started reviewing it, and Angela, we recognized we need to have scope. We need to specifically say what projects we're in. And then typically I'd always have a cover with that too to help that lead in.
So we don't vote for this?
I know.
No,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's why I was confused when I
does say action, so if you wanted to put it up for a vote, you
Yeah, I
could.
don't want, no.
I'm starting to get
I
sick.
waded through it.
Starting to get sick of hearing my own voice, but yeah, I would never vote for this the way this is written. Nexus tried to do the same thing to us. They tried to give us a blanket statement saying, hey, hire us for 2 years, scope and sequence, open door, give us 2.5% of labor, materials, consulting fees, engineering, architecture. I think this is just disrespectful that this was submitted to us in this format, because we didn't fall off the turnip truck yesterday, so I'd like some revisions, please.
Yeah.
Well, and I think once we get that scope, I think, obviously we bring that back if we're even going to use them, right? Because we don't have to do that.
Did we get the report yet that they referred to in 2023? Because they said that there was a report, obviously the report that we paid for.
The report's not going to be done till March.
Well,
So I just kind of pissed off that
we're
this
gonna
was
go over
even
that.
presented to us
Thursday,
when,
This is to recognizing that there's work that we need to start doing on even before the more long term. But again, without scope, we're totally on the same page.
thank you.
And I shouldn't have even brought it there without that. But, I said, put it on when we received it because I hadn't even had a chance to review it. I didn't want to miss this opportunity.
Yeah.
But definitely pulling it for the same reasons you just stated. And they're totally open to this. Unlike Nexus, we couldn't negotiate with them. I mean, not that it was a negotiation, it's just coming to agreements, in terms of what's the scope. The next, can I go to next? The next items, though, what they've identified is they don't have the expertise to totally rule out some things in terms of safety and some other things. And so they recommended, Mike, why don't you come on up here? They've recommended that we need a structural engineer to look at 3 items. So we do have contracts here, and we are going to have Mike share, can give you a little bit background here in terms of, some things are that urgency state that we need, more specifics on this. So Mike, you want to just highlight those 3 contracts
Yeah, some of the areas that, as we're trying to make decisions, what are we going to be doing in the future here? Some of them really have a red flag on them, swimming pools. And that concrete or that storage area that used to be those old coal bins, I guess, we're parking on top of those right now. It was right in front of me. I didn't see that at all, but they noticed that. So they want to do some engineering on that. And then that gymnasium over at Washington, it's just, things are just happening over there, and I'm not comfortable with that space at all. So they want to take a look at it. Right now, they're proposing a total of $7,500 for engineering work on this, which is reasonable when it comes to that type of work. But I really would like to get a handle on these three, which might drive our decisions later on and what we should do with the other buildings. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, what did they find at the Wilson Pool? I thought there was a major project, I think 2 years ago when I was working there. Surprised there's a problem. Yeah, the pool was shut down for most of the year until the end.
2 years ago it was?
I think it was 2 years ago at Wilson.
I'm not aware of.
You might want to check and see what was down there.
Okay. I know there's ventilation and everything we need, like we did at Lincoln High School. The ventilation, the air quality is a major problem there, but they're talking structural here.
Okay.
So I'll ask that question. I don't know.
Anybody else, Chris?
Move to approve the 3 agreements.
Second.
I think it's pertinent.
Any discussion?
I have, maybe it's a question, maybe it's a comment. I certainly hope we're trying to make sure that, I don't have anything against Cedarburg. I truly don't. But if there's somebody closer that has the capabilities to do this, I hope that we're trying to give them opportunities to help us too. Because, we like to support our local economy as much as we can.
This has spread out. These guys are becoming fewer, harder to
Well,
find.
these are very specialized things these guys
Yes.
are looking at, and I get that.
Chris, that is one of our considerations. We've had that discussion, in fact, even on this. In terms of wanting to make sure if there's qualified within, we definitely would want to give that a priority consideration.
Thank you.
I have Steve Hammond that same question also.
Yeah, oh, good.
And this is who he uses often.
Oh,
okay,
So-
yeah.
And that was just gonna be my question too, is, is it prudent for us to get, 3 estimates of structural engineering scope before we go ahead with one?
I really did think there were more coming. But I called Somerville Architects out of Green Bay. They do larger school projects than that. Their engineers are extremely expensive. I was surprised at the $7,500 here that they're willing to do this. This is very reasonable, and they're a reputable firm, so.
What about ACE? Do they have a structural engineer? I felt like they had a structural person there.
It's a good question.
Quick question, this isn't in any way duplicating anything we're already paying for with that other study, is it?
No.
No, and actually, they're saying we don't have structural engineering, so we are asking you to do this.
Okay.
Most firms do it that way. They'll hire a specific engineering firm. A lot of them don't have them on staff, but some may. I'll talk to Chris Herzog tomorrow and ask him that at ACE.
Yeah, I thought when that engineering firm here closed, that one of them went to ACE, but I could be wrong about that.
He's one did. Jeff Gordon did. I don't know if he's structural.
Okay. And then my only other question is, this is just to give us an idea of whether it's safe or unsafe, not necessarily that we're going to do something about it. Does that make sense? Like let's just say that it was cost prohibitive or it wasn't a priority that we fix the pool. I just want to make sure that we're not throwing good money after bad if we are not, if it doesn't make financially feasible sense to fix up a pool. Does that make sense? Like,
We don't have that answer right now.
okay,
As far as the Washington pool, I mean, it was so scary down in there. I advised Jim heavily on that one. But these guys can come down and they can do their borings and their readings, whatever they have. I mean, that piece of steel that's holding up the deck, there's nothing left of it. Well, to me, that we shouldn't be operating in there. But they may look at it and say, well, this concrete deck goes right over the top of this supporting wall. And that's what they're gonna tell us, so.
got it, okay.
You know,
So it's
right
it's
now,
more the
maybe-
research piece.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
a
This
part
is a
of the risk
necessary
assessment, I
piece.
think, of what we're dealing
Got
with
it.
our facilities.
This is kind of what drove that contract that you were just talking about. We were expecting, we wanted to get the okay on this, not from you, but from them. We wanted to get some type of a contract, and then that came along. And,
This will give us a snapshot of the condition of those 3 listed items at the time of the snapshot, and they will stand behind it with their stamp, saying that this is the structural analysis of that facility at this time.
Okay.
So that'll give us we kept asking, we can't assess what we don't know.
Right.
This will give us this is
Now we
where we're
know.
at right now.
there'll be a stamp.
And they'll stamp it
Sure.
instead of CISA 10 saying, well, we can't touch this.
Got it.
Okay?
Just a caution, we have publicly said how much it's going to cost to do this study. It would be a mistake now to go to somebody and say, do you want to bid on this? Because the public now knows how much this cost is.
We don't
Oh.
need to bid.
So I don't think you could, I don't know if you can even do that within the process. It's out there.
Right,
So if somebody came in less, they would go, hey, they knew, you know.
true.
I don't think we need to bid on it.
Yeah,
Because of the
yeah, with professional services.
I would be very careful. Because you put it out there how much it is.
We're asking for your approval.
Yes.
And then let's vote on it.
Motion.
Okay, there's a motion, I believe there's a motion and a second.
I even remember this time.
Yeah, really, and you made it.
Job. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the 3 bids from Ambrose, or not bids rather, but the contracts, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, so, policy documents here, the curriculum development. This is a new policy. I'd look for a motion and a second to approve. A motion by Matthew Spalding, seconded by Biff Hansen. Any discussion about this? Okay, I just had one thing. I was curious about how does this, and this for Jamie, how does this fall into our curriculum mapping? Because it does talk about that it's going to be reviewed. And so I wondered, is this the policy that kind of coincides with that 6-year cycle curriculum mapping?
I don't know if I would say it's the policy that coincides, but I would say that this would be standard practice.
Okay.
So it's always the responsibility of a district to make sure that they have a high quality, that they have a curriculum that has the resources for the teachers to be able to deliver that curriculum.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So any discussion, questions? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
do we wait until that comes back?
I don't know. Chris, what is the ruling on that if a member steps out of the chambers?
The motion passed.
We still have
Majority.
A quorum,
Yeah,
right?
so,
pass it, right?
okay.
So all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, the Next item is the adoption of courses of study. Looking for a motion and a second to approve that.
So we,
Okay, Chris,
Second.
second by Biff. Okay, any discussion on that item? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is our special observance days. And I'll look for a motion and a second to approve that.
Motion.
I'll second.
Chris, second? Okay.
Sure.
Motion by Tony. All right, any discussion on that? Yes, Chris?
Yeah. Mildred Fish Harnick Day, what exactly are we doing to observe that day besides making people learn the name Mildred Fish Harnick?
It's a great question.
How are you not up to date on this?
But based on this policy, there will be some direct curriculum.
Well, you got until next school year. That's the upside. And my only other observation is I'm very disappointed
Special
that 3
observance
days
days.
later,
That's where we're at, Matt.
International Talk Like a Pirate Day
Right.
is not.
It's not there.
Yes, yes.
That's it. That's all I got.
One item I wanted to talk about in reference to this is I got a couple, maybe some of you did as well, I got a couple emails about, and I talked to Mike about this, he did a little research about why we don't have MLK Day off. Other people that have moved recently into the district, coming from places that did have that. So I wanted to bring it up here. Mike did some research back to 2017, I believe, right? And it's been inconsistent. And what Mike said was that if that were to be a priority of the district, we just let them know that when we're doing scheduling. So I thought I would bring it up now since we're talking about these. And just, is that something that we want to have in writing somewhere, that is the will of the district to do that? Yes.
Well, the district's dodge for years has been to make Martin Luther King Jr. Day a staff development day so that students get it off, but teachers have to be in staff development. So rather than addressing the issue, it looks like a day off.
Right, and we did see that in the history. My guess is, and this is just anecdotal because I don't know, but I think even like when I look at how things fell, I think it falls so close to the end of the quarter. So if we would have had MLK Friday and Monday off, and so I'm wondering if that was the reasoning, but I just thought I'd bring it up there. I had a couple parents talk about it, and I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know from other districts, that you guys have worked in. I'm not sure.
I was surprised too.
So, I think we could say, I know it's set now, but again, from a programming standpoint, all of our leaders here helping do this, and, MEA, when we're coming together to do that, do we want to make a stance that we want that to be a day that's off every year within our schedule when you're planning?
I would say that, personally, I think that would be a good idea, just because I think the work he did in this country for civil rights was so monumental and important. And, I'll be honest with you, I don't look up who that Harnick lady was, because I wasn't even familiar with her. So do we have that day off, or is that just like a?
No, this is just saying that you'll have programming in the school.
I got you.
Yeah, to acknowledge each one.
I would agree with having that day off as well too, and I would also move that somehow we convince my job to let me off.
Right, yeah. Well,
I
so.
don't know, it seems to me like a good sign, a good symbol, certainly for minority students.
So I'm wondering if we could,
For-
I wonder if we could amend this special observant day and put in parentheses next to MLK that we would that would be a non-school day. Would that be, does that,
I think that'd be cool.
does that,
Well, again, my experience is in every district I've worked with, that was a day off. That's not been the practice here. We have worked on the calendar. I kind of defer it to Mike a little bit in terms of what are options here with just approving,
Because of the schedule and stuff.
I mean, I'd have to study the calendar a little bit. But, if you wanted me to, I'd be more than willing to do that, see what kind of options we have.
and I don't know necessarily that we need to do it for change our schedule now. I think everybody knows we adopted that. But I think the precedent going forward that come next year, that everybody knows that we have, that we have decided that that is going to be a day that we want off.
Just anecdotally, the school calendar drives it, so really it may not need to be in the policy itself, as this isn't intended to declare which days are off or not. It's sort of just talking about observances and how it creates curricular connections. So I think if you, as a board, want that to happen, it would be done through the guise of creating our annual calendar.
So, but on
And
this,
then just
we don't need to.
that's all I'm saying, is I
Okay.
don't think it has to go in here. I think we can just do it as part of that process.
Do we have a policy on, like,
Let me take off.
right, like we're Christmas, then there has to be a break, okay. I just don't want it to get lost in history, that our board has decided that this is, our district's decided that this is something we want to do, and if we switch HR directors, or, you know what I mean?
Put it on the agenda next month, or next meeting.
Yeah.
If you want it to be in history, put it on the agenda.
There you go.
And I assume we're looking at following the federal recognition, which is the third Monday, because the 15th can fall on weekends.
Correct, yes, yeah.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so just, I wanted to bring that up, and so motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor of accepting the first read of special observance days signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next one is the childcare programs. I'd look for a motion and a second to approve that.
So
So moved by Biff, second by Chris. And any discussion on that? My only question was, do we have, are we doing this now? Do we have childcare programming right now in the school? Like an after-school program or?
The YMCA partners with us and runs like a wraparound service at some of our sites.
Okay.
And we have had discussions about opening a child care for staff.
Okay, and does that fit in this policy and the things that were checked off? Does that fit what you guys have been talking about as far as?
Yes.
that? Okay. It's just more detailed than the last one. Okay, any other discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor of the child care programs first read signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 2270, religion in the curriculum. I look for a motion by Chris Abel and a second. Second by Biff, to go ahead and, any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next is district-sponsored trips. And motion and a second on this one. Chris? Second by Matthew Spalding. Any discussion on this one? Okay, my only thing on this one was the trips that are not sponsored by the district. So this is the very last one. Because we have multiple sites, one of the things I wanted to make sure was, so it says that it would be approval by the principal, which I think is fine, but I wondered if we could put a line in here that, so for instance, if Wilson hears about something and offers it, the principal would, offer it up to their school, but they wouldn't do it to the whole middle school. Possibly, because we've had that in the past. Or, one elementary school hears of something and it doesn't get to every elementary. So I was wondering if, kind of where it says, if approval is granted to solicit students to participate, that all schools will be notified. So could we add that as amendment to this policy? And I would make a motion that we amend it to add that if it's approved, that it would be student solicitation would go to all schools in that grade level. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Second, Matthew Spalding, any discussion? Yes.
I just wonder if you couldn't achieve that by changing the approval to the district administrator, who could then look at it and say, well, really, we could open this up to all the schools. Or maybe it's some weird thing that is so central to what that school is doing that it doesn't apply to other schools, so opening it up to others may not be appropriate. So I would be more comfortable just moving it to district administrator and let district offices make the determinations of what should be broadened and what can stay at the single school.
I like that idea, but then I don't like the idea of taking that authority away from the principal. And I know where this is coming from. We've had other trips where, Wilson went to Washington D.C., Washington didn't, or whatever it may be. And that was more in the trips that were sponsored by the district. So I think I like the idea that the principal has it, but more of a notification at least to let. Yeah, I like the additional words as opposed to changing the authority portion of it. That's just my opinion.
If they don't want other people there. I mean, why, in terms of it just being, growing and complicated and, it seems to me we want to keep these things pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be adding a whole bunch of stuff.
I would be okay with the friendly amendment to switch it to the district administrator if you think that would do the same thing.
If
I
you
just
guys are
wanted
okay
to.
with that, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
Okay.
So we would make an amendment to switch it to having it be the district administrator rather than the principal.
Okay.
And so we don't need a new motion and a second on that because it was a friendly amendment, correct? Okay.
Right.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
You got that, Lisa? We're changing that to the district. Okay.
Okay. All right, our next is educational options provided by the district. A motion and a second to approve the first reading.
So moved.
So moved by Chris, second by Biff. Any discussion on that at all? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The next one is the homebound instruction program. And this would, looking for a motion in a second. Chris?
I'm ready. Sure.
Carrie with his yawn.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Carrie loves power.
Yes.
What?
Okay, and then, that's it. Okay, I was moving into the other ones. So, I'll have you guys just look through the, suggested policy revisions, for, coming up.
Yeah.
And Lee, did you want to go through those or?
As long, if you want me to, I can read them out, otherwise it's fine. They'll be on for first read Thursday.
For Thursday, okay.
They'll be on for Thursday? You're kidding. Really?
Get your book out, Carrie.
Well, we don't have to, but that was the.
That's the plan.
I love spending 2 weeks with them.
Well, these are short ones.
Okay.
I did put short for the most part of this.
Quite the salesman there, Mr. Dennis.
Thank you.
Okay, so the remarks from board president, just wanted to, I've talked a lot about the convention, and I don't know if Kerry wanted to talk about any other ones that he went to, any of the sessions. Did you want to say anything more about that? one of the only ones that I wanted, and I did talk to Jim, and he actually called the school already. There's a school that they developed their own individual report cards that they send out monthly. And it just looked like a really good way to communicate with the not only the public, but the parents. And so
This is White Turner.
Lloyd Turner. And so the PowerPoint was really great. So I'm just going to look into having them send us the PowerPoint. Jim did talk to the technical guy. It integrates a lot of the resources. He just wrote code that to get this document to come out, and it's, colorful and, but it also looks at, the title of it was Redefining Ready, and getting it from the classroom to the living room. And so it really kind of was a, really good snapshot of where your child is, but also being able to communicate that data to the community. So that was just one that I went to that I thought was interesting, and kind of following the initiatives, not trying to recreate the wheel and some of the stuff that we're doing. Other than that, I think that's all I have.
I don't know, I really like this convention in that it gives me the bigger, more varied context. And I like to see how other people in other districts are thinking about some of the same things as we're thinking about. And, so it's just, as a personal thing, it's
Yeah.
highly interesting.
Oh, I know, the one thing I wanted to say about Sean Covey's presentation was the things that he identified there. A lot of them we were doing, what's the book called? The Four?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got them, I pulled it out, I should have brought it in.
But a lot of the things I thought was great that we were doing, but I just think that it was and actually Jim was talking about the goals, and he showed up on the screen those people that pick more than like 4 to 10 goals. There to reach them is 0. The people that pick 3 to 4 maybe make 1 or 2, but the people that are doing between 1 and 3 are doing 1 and 3. So, I mean, again, I think there were a lot of things in there that has kind of reinforced some of the things that we're trying to do in our district, which I thought was good. And some room to grow.
I had used that process with SFA when I was at the charter school in Milwaukee. We were prioritizing even further than SFA in terms of what was the main things we had to do.
So upcoming meeting dates, obviously Thursday, we're going to meet. And just briefly, can you give a brief, Jim, what to expect on Thursday? What is CISA going to present to us if the document isn't finished?
First of all, you have the presentation. So it's been sent to you already. It's loaded up, right? With the posting of the board
and the agenda for Thursday already?
So they will review that, so it's,
Okay.
It's already out there in terms of, some of the findings and some of the pictures that, again, it's not due until March, but, it's important to start elevating the discussion right away.
Okay. So then, so our next meeting will be Thursday, and then we'll be back to our regular schedule in February, the second week, Tuesday. Okay? All right. So that's all for our open session. We are going to convene. The Board of Action will vote to convene in closed session for the purpose of considering the following matter. Considering the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. The meeting is authorized pursuant to section 19.85, subsection C of Wisconsin statutes to address 3 items: superintendent evaluation, progress objectives, superintendent contract, and the pending personnel matter. And we will need a roll call vote.
Christopher Abel.
Aye.
Bill Hansen.
No.
Matthew Phipps.
Yes.
Stacy Selder,
Yes.
Matthew Spalding,
Aye.
Carrie Trask.
Yes,
Sorry,
sorry.
Tony Bostelica.
Aye.
Okay, so it is 8:18 and we are in closed session.
Is it?
Yeah, and I'm gonna run to the bathroom.
I'll